The URSA 12K has suddenly had a massive price drop. Is it time to buy one? Hello, my name is Jonathan Palfrey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now today I wanted to talk to you about this sudden announcement that Blackmagic have dropped the price of the URSA 12K to the same price as the 4.6K G2. That's a massive price drop. In America, I think it's a $4,000 price drop, and a similar kind of price drop here in the UK as well. And to suddenly see this, very flagship camera come down at such a price, what is going on? And is it worth buying one now the price is so much cheaper? Now, first off, I feel so sorry for anyone out there that has actually gone ahead and bought like a 12K in the last few weeks, because, we all know equipment gets beaten all the time, things evolve, things change, but I think you'd have hoped that the 12K would have held its price for a little longer than just about a year. Not to mention to have such a drop, a dramatic drop in such a short space of time. Maybe a 1,000 off, whatever, you think, okay, fair enough, it's a year old now, things move on, things change, but just have such a huge drop is, quite a dramatic moment, and hopefully it hasn't caused too many issues for people watching this video. So now the price has been dropped so much, and it's the same price as the 4.6K, I'd have to imagine that probably means the end of the 4.6K. I mean, why have both cameras out there at the same price? I know they have slightly different technology in terms of their sensors and everything, and maybe the 4.6K is better for certain reasons, and I'd probably argue that I'd prefer 4.6K over 12K in most scenarios. But I think because of the way the sensor technology works, allowing you to do a full readout of the sensor in 4K, 8K or 12K, it seems like that's the way the Blackmagic want to go. And I think actually that's probably the reason. So they mentioned in their statement that the reason for the price drop was because they've managed to reduce the cost of components and reduce the cost of making the sensor, which is interesting really right now, considering all the chip shortages and everything. You think if anything prices would be going up. But I guess it probably wasn't selling that amazing at the sort of higher price range, which was still a great price for having such a unique high resolution camera. But that was its problem. It was so niche that I don't think maybe many people outside of visual effects artists that needed 12K were really looking at that camera as a realistic option. Now bringing it back down to the URSA G2 prices, that makes things very interesting, because I think that was already such a powerful camera for its price. That said, it was starting to look a little bit, weak against some of the competition, as it doesn't have the autofocus like the FX6. It didn't have certain functions. Obviously, it's a lot larger and more power hungry than things like the C70. And you've got things like the Komodo out now, which has its global shutter. So the URSA 4.6K, even though still an amazing camera, was starting to really sort of struggle against all the competition. So I guess that's the whole point of reducing this 12K down to that price bracket, because now suddenly you've got a unique feature from Blackmagic that the others just really can't offer. So with that said, I think the 4.6K, we are seeing the end of that. That will probably be disappearing very, very soon. It makes sense that Blackmagic now want to just sort of focus on this new sensor technology, the sensor that they developed themselves. And I think they're going to probably want to try and get that sensor in all of their cameras across the board going forward. I think this is the last time with the reuse of the Pocket 4K sensor in the studio camera. I think that's the last time we will see sort of other sensors being bought in and used in their cameras. I think going forward, all new cameras, like maybe a replacement to the Pocket 6K Pro, for example, will have this new sensor technology. In fact, I think they're going to probably end up using the same sensor across multiple cameras as they get better at manufacturing, making it cheaper, and obviously not requiring as much power and cooling and all that kind of thing, for the reason why a camera has to be the size it is. If they can get that right down, they can maybe make a smaller mini camera, like a box camera, or probably more likely, which a lot of people don't really want, another pocket camera design. Maybe it will be even bigger again than the Pocket 6K Pro. And thinking of that then, what does that mean for cameras like the Pocket 6K Pro? I mean, does this mean now suddenly the 12K is knocking on its door and, is this going to be replaced soon? Well, NAB is not too far away, it's in October, so I wouldn't be surprised if, the sensor that's in the 12K ended up in a Pocket series camera or a smaller body camera anyway, at least, come that time of year. We're probably not going to really see any new features from Blackmagic. We're not going to probably see autofocus, and we're not going to see a stabilized sensor, which is a real shame because the two really big things that I want in this camera. If it had those two features, this would be the absolute perfect camera, but unfortunately it falls slightly short. I think for now the Pocket 6K Pro is pretty safe, and I think the 4K is pretty safe as well, because I'd imagine they've just made it so cheap to produce now that it's one of those things, it's an entry into the Blackmagic ecosystem, which is actually pretty smart from them. That said though, I think the standard 6K we're going to probably see disappear. There isn't much purpose for it anymore now the 6K Pro exists, and now the 12K URSA is so much cheaper. Was the URSA 12K a fail? No, I don't think so. I think it was just maybe slightly overpriced and just too niche in that price bracket. When you're competing against the C300 and even the C500 and FX9, you're looking at a different sort of bracket of camera that this camera didn't really fit in. It still was an URSA at the end of the day. It still had very much the features of a 4.6K. And for most uses, that's enough resolution. So it was hard to justify almost double the price for just extra resolution. And I think that's where they kind of failed at trying to market the 12K in the price bracket that it was in. If anything, I think they probably should have released the 12K as a replacement to the 4.6K straight away. I think that would have been a smarter option. And I also think maybe they could have just limited the sensor to just 6K rather than 12K. You could have built up to 12K. There was no rush to get up to that kind of high resolution, as impressive as it was. But I think they did it because they just kind of wanted to be able to justify such a heavy price increase on their new sensor technology. But now the prices are down and they can make it probably cheaper than they could ever purchase the 4.6K sensors for. It makes sense to then just really make that your main URSA camera going forward. So would I be tempted to buy an URSA 12K? Well, it is tempting. They do look very impressive. That said, I think it is still a specialist camera. I mean, it's still very power hungry. And for me now, cameras just need to be more lighter. They need to be more efficient. And I think for our uses, I just don't think the extra resolution would be that useful. Now, the extra frame rates would be really nice, but then you can get that in other cameras. And actually things like the autofocus and things like the stabilized sensor in the small bodies and really good battery life, I think that's what we really want now. And hopefully Blackmagic will get there with all those technologies. Hopefully we'll have all the wonderful features that Blackmagic have given us, such as Blackmagic RAW, the daylight viewable massive screens, the incredible user interface, all of that, what makes using Blackmagic kit so great, integration into the A10 mini series, all that incredible stuff. Hopefully they can really sort of keep advancing that, and later this year we'll see, the next version where we'll start bringing in some of those other features of the other brands into the Blackmagic cameras. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my quick take on the Blackmagic 12K. Will you be buying one now? It's a lot cheaper. Have you regretted purchasing one at the wrong moment and, spent all this extra money that you really feel like you shouldn't have spent? What about the URSA 4.6K? Did you buy one of those recently, or were you thinking about buying one? Will you now go for the 12K instead? Or perhaps did you go for the Pocket 6K Pro but now wish you went for the URSA 12K? Lots of questions there. Hopefully a few people will be able to answer their opinions on it, because I'd be really intrigued to see what everyone thinks. For me, as I mentioned, I think I'd still stick with the Pocket 6K. I think out of the options, the 6K Pro ticks so many boxes, and for now, I don't think anything really beats it for price and everything else. And the extra money for the URSA 12K just wouldn't really be worth it, especially when you factor in all the extra batteries and all the other accessories you need to sort of run the camera. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe because it massively helps out my YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.